Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. The fellas heading out to the Big 12 to take a look at a game that in the beginning of the year, in this summer, this game was penciled in as the winner of this is probably winning the Big 12 championship game. Now, both these teams have obviously gone through some rough patches during the season, but the last two games, both of these teams looking like they're some of the best teams in the Big 12. And again, if you're TCU, if you're Kansas State, if you're Oklahoma State, you don't want to see either of these two teams in the Big 12 championship game. They're both kind of hitting their stride again, getting healthy. This is going to be a very fun game between two coaches that we absolutely love, Dave Aranda and Brent Venables. Before we get into it, though, again, I just want to say thank you guys for the support you guys have shown the channel. The Sooner fans, you guys have been absolutely electric. There are not many fan bases better than those out in Norman. Baylor as well, we do appreciate all the support. We're at what, almost 2.3 thousand subscribers, and that is thanks to all the love that you guys have shown. So if you like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dale, I'm gonna kick it off to you. Get us going here. What are your early takes on this game?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at these two teams, these are two of the teams I probably missed hardest on because I thought Baylor was a top 10 team easily, and I thought Oklahoma was not a lock to win the Big 12. But again, kind of what you said, the two favorites, and there was a wide margin. I mean, obviously Kansas State, TCU, both are really coming on. I mean, those two teams are really playing some ball. Oklahoma State's playing really well, and so is Texas, frankly, along with even you could argue Kansas to an extent. So I think the Big 12 is just a better conference in general, which is maybe making these teams look like weak, and I think a lot of people are really down on Oklahoma. I don't think this team is nearly as bad as people think, coming off that stretch that I think didn't look good at the time they were playing it. But if you look at the rankings in retrospect, that was a brutal stretch of the Kansas State, TCU, Texas right in a row.
Especially with Dylan Gabriel going down. We talked about this. The Big 12 was wide open. I mean, Oklahoma with a ton of moving parts, it was kind of foolish to think that they would just click right away. Like, there was a lot of hype around Brent Venables, but he's doing something that Lincoln Riley just wasn't doing. The style of what they want to do is a lot different. And so it was a little bit foolish and a little bit overzealous of us, including like the Sooner hype boys, as you and I were during the summer, to expect them to just hit the ground running. This Baylor team lost so much talent on the defensive side of the ball. Even on the offensive side of the ball, they kind of lost their guys. And so they were also retooling. But again, two teams that are very well coached and they're very talented. Dill, I want to start with this Oklahoma offense that when Dylan Gabriel's cooking and when Jeff Levy's cooking and when Eric Gray's cooking, this is one of the hardest offenses in the country to stop.
Yeah, I mean, they're spreading the ball around. They got really good receivers. Mims, Jaleel Farouk is coming on and playing really good football. Gray is as good of a running back I think there might be in the conference, if not the country. I think he is criminally underrated with what he's able to do. So obviously he's questionable coming into this game, but I suspect he'll play. And if he is, he's a very dynamic weapon. But again, I think a lot of it is coming down to, is Gabriel playing good football or not? Because I think he's been a little inconsistent in terms of what you want from him. I don't think he played well enough for them to win that Kansas State game. I think you go back and watch that. He missed too many easy throws that he just can't miss because, again, they have guys open enough. And if he plays really well, I think this Oklahoma offense is really hard to stop, especially because they play really good up front.
And Dylan Gabriel's a guy that we're not used to seeing miss those passes. Like at UCF, he was one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the whole entire country. For the most part, been accurate, but only completing 64% of his balls. That's a dip from what we saw and what we're used to out of Dylan Gabriel. It might have to do with kind of getting used to some new receivers, some new timing. But when Dylan Gabriel's clicking and the amount of talent they have, you mentioned guys like Marvin Minis-Theowiese, Jaleel Farouk, I just want to highlight again, he's going to be a dog. He's young, but he's going to be so good. I think Drake Stoops has also been extremely good. They got very, very good tight end play from Braden Willis and then Eric Gray. Can they run the football? That's what they want to do. They have a very, very good offensive line. Anton Harrison, Wanya Morris, they're as well coached up front as any team in the country. They develop guys at an extremely high level. Behind a guy like Eric Gray, behind an offensive line like that, that seems to be the question. And when you look at what Baylor does best, it is stopping the run with guys like Siaki Ika. They're only allowing 3.3 yards per carry. That seems to be where this game starts and where it might be won.
The problem with what Baylor is, and I think why their defense isn't as good as people thought, is they're just not dominating up front in terms of rushing the passer. And I get they're doing a great job stopping the run. I think that comes as kind of no surprise. but they're not rushing the passer like I thought they'd be able to. And that's hurting them. I mean, you look at that West Virginia game, give up 43 points. And I do recognize they did fumble the ball. I think there was a fumble touchdown, which obviously skews it a little bit. But they still were giving up a lot. I mean, they were letting West Virginia go up and down. And that if you're letting West Virginia do it, I think you are going to struggle a little bit with Oklahoma because they're just a more talented, faster, more athletic offense. And that's what concerns me is they're just not dominating teams in the pass rush, and I don't think their secondary, they lost too much to not be really good up front.
Yeah, that's where they're struggling. That's why we were so high on Baylor is because, they lose some guys in the secondary.
And Oklahoma will be the best offensive line they face probably. I think there's a couple pros on that team, and they're playing really good football.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Now, flipping the side, this Baylor offense, I think, is starting to hit their stride. It's a team that wants to run the football, but losing guys like Abram Smith, like Tristan Ebner, they've kind of struggled to find that back that they're going to lean on. I think they found it with Richard Reese, the true freshman, who's now averaging 5.2 yards per carry. He's gone for almost 800 yards on the year. He's starting to be their bell cow, to be the guy that they lean on behind a very good offensive line. That seems to be what Baylor wants to do too. They're going to try to run the football and then hit some explosive plays and play action. Oklahoma, not been so good stopping the run, 4.6 yards per carry to opposing running backs. I need guys like you look at this Oklahoma team, I'm very high on some of these guys. Deshaun White, Danny Stutzman, two guys who I think are absolute freaks. Deshaun White, if you took a look at what he did against Iowa State, was an absolute maniac on the field. I want to see more of that, and I want to see that more of like that downhill, aggressive Oklahoma defense that we thought we'd see under Brent Venables.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I do think they're not playing the brand of defense I think we all thought they were going to play. I think it is a little more passive than what maybe we would have expected. And again, I think now is the time. Yeah, they got to turn it up. They got to play the Brent Venables style that he played at Clemson because that's what he does. And I think you're right. They do have the athletes. Like you're talking about their linebacker core. I think that's good. I think their secondary is pretty good for the most part. You're right. They're giving up a lot of yards on the ground.
Their secondary, I think that's kind of what was prohibiting Brent Venables from really playing that aggressive brand is when you want to play aggressive, you have to trust your guys in the back end to kind of win in one-on-one situations. They've been banged up, and they're a young group, and you've seen kind of some cracks in that. When they played Kansas State, when they played TCU, they were giving up some of those explosive plays when they played Texas. This defense is starting to find its rhythm again, I think, especially in the back end. If Baylor can't hit those explosive plays to guys like Monterey Baldwin, I think I'm leaning the Sooners here. But again, this game is a massive toss-up, and I guess that's a good turning point to ask you, kind of the champ of the Baylor football team. You've been beating the drum all year. What is your pick here with Baylor getting 3.5 points as they go on the road to Norman?
Man, I don't know. It feels like they're giving up. Feels like this game should be closer to even, frankly. But I'm also not comfortable betting Baylor because I don't think they're going to play good enough defense in this game to have. I mean, their offense looks just like it's not wildly explosive. It is getting better. I mean, Holmes is starting to emerge a little bit. Baldwin's playing good football. But I don't think they're consistently doing what they were able to do last year, which was hit big plays in the run and then use it to hit big plays and play action. So I think that's hurting them. And again, I don't know. I don't see how they're going to get a ton of pass rush on this Oklahoma team, but I don't know. This game feels like it should be a pick 'em, though, if I'm being honest. My gut.
Yeah, Blake Shapen, they're starting to put more on him. When Blake Shapen came in last year, when they started the year out with him, they were kind of giving him some easy throws. And this guy is extremely accurate. He's completing over 70% of his balls. That's because Baylor was giving, they have a great offense coordinator. They schemed up a lot of easy throws for Blake Shapen. They're starting to ask him to do more, and the offense is starting to click. I like the Sooners. I don't necessarily like it at 3.5. If it gets inside of 3, that's when you see me getting Oklahoma. I think this game is going to be very close. I think it could be a field goal. It's, in my mind, a pick 'em too, but I kind of like what I've seen. I just trust this Oklahoma offense a little bit more.
I think it might fly over. If you're asking me one pick to I get the over is kind of high at 57.5, but both these teams are giving up some points. And again, what you mentioned is they're as much as there's some talent on that Oklahoma secondary, they are giving up some big plays. And there's moments where they're really good, but you give up 2 50-plus yard touchdown passes, that's over football.
And I'd also be lying if I wasn't concerned about the run defense. I mean, allowing 4.6 yards per carry against a team that as much of a bruise like this Baylor offensive line is very good, especially running the football. They have some really good running backs who are emerging. I think Baylor, and this would be really bad news for Oklahoma if Baylor can just run the football and keep this explosive, high-octane offense off the field. I could see a very skewed time of possession where Baylor holds the ball for a long time. If Oklahoma can't put some drives together, especially early, that could spell trouble for Oklahoma. This is a game that is going to be great. I'm going to be watching it. It's going to be on my monitor. But these two teams, like, it's kind of hard to trust either teams because you've seen the good and the ugly. You've seen the really good for Oklahoma. You've seen the really good for Baylor. You've also seen the ugly. It's not a game that I'm necessarily excited to bet, but it's going to be a massive game for two teams that are struggling this year as coming in as Big 12 favorites.
And both teams need this win, in my opinion, because they need a big win. I don't think either of them have their statement big win. And this looks like, I don't know if they're – obviously Oklahoma's gotten beat by their other big games for the most part so far. Could beat Oklahoma State. We'll see, but I think they need this Baylor win.
I'm with you. This one is going to be very good. I cannot wait. Again, we appreciate all the support you guys have shown. If you did like the content, consider subscribing. It helps the fellas out a lot. We appreciate you guys. And we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.